Welcome to From a Woman to a Leader, a podcast dedicated to discussing the challenges and providing tips for women in tech leadership. Hi, I'm your host, Limor Bergman-Gross, and in each episode, we'll hear from other successful women in tech, sharing their stories, insights, and advice. Join us as we empower each other to reach our full potential in the tech industry. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of From a Woman to a Leader. And I'm super excited to have here today Ritu Natkarni. And we're going to talk about the topic that is so important, especially for women. We're going to talk about empowering negotiation and bringing your authentic self to the table. But before we dive in, I want to introduce to Ritu, who actually I met through a mutual friend, Shiri. So thank you, Shiri, for making the connection. And Ritu is an executive in biotech with so many years of experience, and she is also a chief member. And hi, Ritu, and welcome.
Hi, Limor. Such a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for allocating your busy schedule and finding time in your early morning. And Ritu, why don't you just give the audience just a little bit of background about you and kind of your expertise?
Absolutely. Happy to. Like I said, it's a pleasure to be here. And a big shout out to Shiri for introducing me to you, Limor. I always say a friend of Shiri is a friend of mine. So I'm happy to be here and talking to you and your audience and hopefully share a couple of pearls from my journey that would inspire other women. So I'm a global healthcare executive. That's how I like to introduce myself. I've been in the industry for about 20 years. And 3 continents. I love the diversity my career has offered me, both in terms of geography, but especially in terms of different roles across commercial functions. And it's taught me so much. I think what women don't realize is when you're working outside of house, your work teaches you so much about yourself. So I've been fortunate to work with some amazing companies and amazing people, and here I am 20 years later, and I live a very integrated life. I have a thriving career, but also a great home life with my kids and husband and my mom and brother who live close by. So I enjoy the whole integration of work-life balance.
That's wonderful. And we don't have to choose, right? We don't have to choose either or. You can raise a family and enjoy them while still thriving at the workplace.
Yes, it's easier said than done, for sure. And, it's important that you have that right support to help you do that. So I agree. And I think that's where fulfillment comes, is when you can be able to do things that you love, both at work and at home. But for being able to do that, just having that right support is so crucial. And I've been fortunate to have that, both in terms of my husband and my mom being so close, the nannies who've helped raise my kids. So it truly takes a village. And I've really been fortunate to have that village. And if somebody says, what has led to some of the successes you've had? And 100%, it is having this village in place for me.
Yeah, for sure. And get all the support you need. And sometimes you get help from your family and friends. Sometimes you just buy help, which is okay, right? Let's drop the guilt and get the help we need, right? It's not the topic of the conversation, but because you mentioned it, I think it's very important to talk about those things because women are full with guilt all the time.
Aren't we, Limor?
Yeah.
I feel like when you're always thinking, am I good enough at work? Am I good enough as a parent? And supporting, having women, a network of women, of like-minded women helps to answer that. Nobody gets it 100% right. As long as you're doing your best and people are surviving, I think you're doing a good job. And the guilt is always there, but having the right women surrounding you helps with that, managing that guilt.
Absolutely. And let's take a step back and talk kind of about your journey. So you moved from India to the US, kind of really different culture. Talk to us a little bit about how this kind of multicultural background shaped your approach to negotiation, to leadership. and to your
Yeah.
career. Yeah.
I grew up in a multi-generational home in India. So I lived in a family where there was great grandmother who was probably 85, 90 at that age, and then 6, 7 year old child living in the same house, right? So when you grow up in this joint family culture, very early you learn that there are different perspectives. And how do you manage different perspectives to get things done is what you get to learn living in a multi-generational household. And you also learn that you don't have to do everything alone. You have a group of people you can count on and use each other's skill sets to have a successful life. So I think that's what I remember most from my childhood. And I was also lucky to grow up in a time in India where India was opening her door to globalization. I saw foreign brands come into India. My dad owned a company that manufactured hospital equipment. So I did get exposure to healthcare very early on. And I was floored by the quality of people I met there. Doctors fascinated me. Their ability to impact human life, human health was so fascinating to me. And it always had this noble value that I placed in my mind for healthcare. So that's how my interest in healthcare started. I knew science wasn't the path I wanted to take. I was very critical and strategic in my thought process, and I loved business. So again, I was lucky to be at the right place, right time, and had the right support system to figure out that there's not just one way to succeed in healthcare. I was able to go to business school very early on and get recruited by a medical device company called Karl Stoll's Endoscopy, which was a German-based company. So I moved to Germany and worked and learned so much from that company. I got to work in different departments and really see how global healthcare works, how manufacturing is done, and how it's distributed across the globe. Again, timing. Got married really early to my college sweetheart. He was moving to the US, and our family said, if he's moving to US, you're moving to US as well. And the German company asked me if I wanted to continue working for them. And they offered me a job in the US. The challenge there was the job was in Texas and their headquarters was in California. So they said, if you're moving to Texas, then what we have for you is a sales job. Now, think of this young 20-year-old Indian woman moving to the States, new country, new marriage, does not know a thing about sales. And those of your listeners who know medical device sales know that it's a very competitive selling environment. You're selling to some of the top surgeons in the world, and the Texas Medical Center is a very prominent medical center in the United States. So, you interact with some of the top surgeons, and it's a multi-million-dollar deal. So it was a very uncomfortable situation that I was put in. But I think that's what gave me the best base of starting a career, because I was thrown on the deep end and I had to learn to swim. While on one hand, I was learning how to drive on the right side of the road. I was going to community college in the evenings. I spoke English growing up, but I had a strong accent. So my company sent me to school to neutralize my accent so I could speak to surgeons with a mask on, but also learning Americanism. If you live in America, when you grow up in India, you know English, but the American English is not the same. I remember early on when people would say, somebody threw somebody under the bus. And I was like, are they literally throwing people under the bus? Things like that. It sounds stupid at this point, having lived in this country now for 20 years. But that time it was so new. So it was just a rapid learning curve for the next 4, 5 years, and had such amazing mentors. Like the people I worked with, God bless them to have patience to deal with somebody as raw me, but that was the best business school in sales I could have gone in. So that formed the foundation. And that's the journey that got me from India to the US.
Wow, that's a wonderful journey, and so many changes, right? I mean, you married and you moved from India to Germany and to US, and you got into, medical devices. So it was a learning curve for you, and also into sales. So can you share some strategies about, okay, how did you face this moving into a sale role where you're still in, an expat, you're still getting used to US?
Yes. And like I started by saying the people I worked with. I was really, really fortunate. The guy I was paired with, I still am in touch with him 20 years later. He was a good teacher. He was strict. He wasn't an easy teacher. I was getting up at 3 in the morning, driving an hour, getting the medical devices in biohazard, getting them sterilized, then being in the OR all day, wrapping up at 4 or 5. So it was long working days, a lot of work on my end. But he took me under the wings. He took this raw person who knew nothing and started teaching her. I'll tell you, it wasn't easy anymore. I was so embarrassed to be in sales. For the first 2 years, I told people I was in marketing because I didn't want to be associated with a salesperson. But then I think what helped was having a teacher like him. And secondly, really coming to realize that every salesperson need not look the same. You need not look and talk the same, because very soon I realized I don't look like a medical device salesperson. That's a typical, and I hate to stereotype, but 40 to 50, 60-year-old white male person is a successful medical device salesperson. And I didn't look anything like that. I didn't talk that way. But what I did realize is I had worked in their headquarters in Germany. I knew the products better than anybody else here in America. I was a good listener, or I still am a good listener. I have this proportion of 2 ears, one mouth. So I listen strategically, and I have a strategic mindset. So even though I didn't have the charisma and the looks and the way of talking of successful sales rep, I started to realize what's unique to me and how do I utilize that to become a successful salesperson. And then you realize that's not one way to do one thing. You could do it in multiple different ways. And the best part is I fell in love with sales. I've had multiple different roles. I keep going to marketing, market access, different roles, but I keep coming back to sales leadership, because it drives me. I'm a driven person. I'm a red person. So I just was lucky to find the right mentor, find the right passion, and you realize that I'm using my unique skill sets to have that balance that worked for me. So lot of luck, lot of right guidance, and being at the right place. I recently asked my manager, why were you so kind to me? Why did you take me under the wing when I just didn't know anything? So I don't know what value I was adding to you for the first 2 years. And he said, Ritu, you showed passion. You showed heart. You showed a drive. You didn't know how to drive on the road. You didn't know how to speak to these people, but you weren't willing to give up. So that continuous persuasive nature is what made me want to help you through this. And, last 2 years that I worked with him, so I was with him for 5 years, we were salesperson of the year across the nation. We were the top 2 individual contributors for the company. So really was the best sales school that I could go to.
That's wonderful. And you mentioned that you found your authentic way of selling, right? Ritu way of selling. Can you give some tips about, because again, I don't know if people watching us are in sales, but we all need to sell something, right? We sell ourselves, we need to sell our ideas, our, career, whatever. So what is unique to you, and what strategies you use to sell?
So strategic selling is what works for me. Any situation I'm in, and you're right, constantly selling. We are selling ourselves to each other. We are selling a product. We are selling a service. But what I started internalizing is I don't want to sell. I don't want to push something to someone. So I have been curious about understanding where the needs are. When I connect with people, be it a customer, be it person I'm meeting for the first time, be it somebody on my team, I truly understand where that person's coming from. And having grown in that multicultural background definitely helps. Right? Genuinely caring about people, understanding what their requirements are, where are the gaps, what will help them move towards their goal, and how does what I offer adds value to them. I think that's the way I approach any selling situation, is coming from a place of truly caring for the individual and how can I support them to get better in what they're trying to achieve. a lot of times I leave a meeting without selling anything, but connecting them to someone else I know in my network who can support them better. So I don't think of I have to sell this today, and I don't go for the short game. It's never about short game. It's about thinking long-term relationships. For me, that's important. So when I work with someone, it's always how can I support them? And eventually, I'm such a strong believer of karma. Things come back. If I'm always giving, things will come back to me. And that's how I approach it.
Obviously, it works for you, right? Being
It does.
top at sales, so it does work. Yeah, so you mentioned a lot of things that I think that are very common for women, right? They want to support others, to be empathetic, to really be curious about their needs and how can you help them, thinking strategically, thinking more long-term, less on the immediate gains, and
Right?
valuing the connection, the relationships over immediate kind of, okay, what am I going to get out of
Yeah.
it right now?
Yeah. And when people think of sales, they don't think that way. I think the misconception is sales is about quotas, about numbers, and trying to get those things today. But I push my team to really think about how do we look at a bigger picture and really be okay that what you're offering might not be a good fit for everybody. And I think sometimes that's the hard part is you want to you want to spread your wings or as broad as you can. And that's a good thing. But sometimes I say we have to go deeper. We really have to hyper target the exact people that need our product and genuinely where we are serving their needs and really support them with the offerings we had. And I think that's the mindset that I've used and then I share with my team. And it's frustrating sometimes when you don't have those immediate results, but it always works in the long term.
Absolutely. And you mentioned also, obviously you lived in multiple countries and you mentioned different cultures. Can you share a little bit, maybe examples of how do you kind of use the cultural awareness and willing to build the successful relationship and take
Yeah,
that into
no,
account?
absolutely. So each of us are naturally some kind of people. Like I'm a naturally driven, red person. That's who I am. And this is a learning I've had over the period, over the years, is when somebody comes to me with challenge, my gut reaction is let's get to a solution. Like that's how I work. I want to understand the challenge, but then really move to action. What is it that we can do to solve this? And over the year, and I'll be honest with you, I just finished my year in review, and one of the feedback, and again, you know, lucky to work with some phenomenal leaders. When my leader gives me feedback, I know that they are coming from this place of genuine care. They want me to get better. And my leader tells me, Ritu, you're the most open person I know who likes to get those feedback because, and I tell her, if you don't give me that feedback, I'll never know where my blind spots are. So when we sat down for a year-end review, she's like, one of the things that you can do better is really you always you come from care and candor, you're very empathetic, you support your team with the right resources, you're getting them to the point they want to, and your philosophy, which is such a big philosophy of mine, is I tell them what they're doing well. Because if I want certain behavior, I do this with my kids all the time. I want certain behavior, I praise those behaviors, right? So I've done that with my team consistently. If I see them doing something good, I keep praising it so they do more of it. And she said, what you miss, if somebody is not doing well, what are you pointing those gaps with them? Are you sitting down and actually walking them through? I've always believed that I hire great people, I give them all the resources and get out of the way. That's been my style of leadership. But when we had this conversation, it made me pause and think, what if somebody needs a little bit more of hand holding? So I have to alter that style to now help people who are in different places. So this big example to share that really understanding where the people are adjusting my leadership style to suit that individual. That would be the second thing. And third, always start by building trust, because before you can correct, you have to connect. So connecting with people before correcting them is another thing that I use as I see how to coach and help people find their authentic self.
Absolutely. And I think this is where women are so strong, because we do have naturally the empathy and the urge to build those connections, to build relationships. Yeah. And that eventually creates trust, and trust eventually yields to being able to persuade, to negotiate, to really do whatever you want.
Yep. You are so right about that.
And do you have any stuff? Yes, go ahead.
I was gonna say, and that's such underutilized skill set. I'm grateful that over the last few years that has come on the forefront, right? Otherwise, it was such a toxic leadership image that we all had in mind. You have to be strong, you have to set directions, and you have to command and move people in a direction. But now I think people have come to realize there's more than one way of leading people. You can lead by connecting. You can lead by inspiring. You can lead by influencing without just having to have one way of pushing and forcing people to do certain things. And that, I think, has been just a shift as we're seeing more and more women leaders come to power.
Yeah, and I think this is the only way to lead, especially the younger generations, right?
Yeah.
So
true.
We cannot just tell them what to do. It won't work. And I wanted to talk to you about authentic negotiation. Like, do you have some either examples or practical tips you can share about how to negotiate, but still negotiate authentically, being true to yourself?
Absolutely. So I think it comes down to how well do you know yourself? And are you really able to put your full self out there? So I'll share an example with you, Limor. You know, when you are an immigrant who moves into a new country, you want nothing more than just blend in. You just want to blend in. You don't want anybody to think you're different. As growing up Indian woman, I had a little nose ring, right? When I came here and started sales, I immediately removed it because at that point, 20 years back, piercing and tattoos were not considered professional. So I immediately removed that. I would go to award functions and somebody would say, oh, you should wear Indian gear. I'm like, no way. I would be dressed up in suits, not even skirts or dresses. I would wear suits so I could just blend in. In about 2016, I lost my dad very suddenly. He was very young. He was just 60, very healthy man. And I spoke to him one day, and next day he passed away from a massive heart attack. I think that was a turning point in my life where I realized life is so unpredictable. Do I want to just keep blending in? Or do I want to take a stand and really show up as who I am? So if I'm leading by emotions, but that is who I am. If I feel strongly about it, share it because that's who I am. Prior to that, tell you the shift that I've seen, right? Prior to my dad passing away, I had won multiple sales awards. At that point, I think I was at 4 or 5 sales awards. And I was asked, what are you doing? Because Houston is an important market. You know, Texas is one of the top medical markets in the US. You consistently win in that market. How are you doing it? And my answer would be, oh no, I just work hard and I do what everybody else is doing. I just didn't want to share because in my mind, that was bragging. How am I bragging on myself? But when this shift happened, I said, no, these are the things that I do. I don't go broadly after customers. I find the right customers. I connect with those customers, uniquely understand and that's how I connect and sell. So became very vocal about it. And I know at that point, I had so many, especially women leaders, tell me that this is what we want. Because Ritu, you have to change the mind. I'm bragging about myself too. I'm supporting somebody else. The things I'm sharing might help somebody else come up with their way of doing things. Truly was a shift for me to understand myself and show up. And again, I've been fortunate to have people who let me be myself. I've been with companies where it's not just okay to show up. It's okay to show up as your authentic self. They would encourage it. And that's how I continued finding my authentic self. And that's the place I come when I am negotiating, because I genuinely know what is non-negotiable for me. What are my boundaries? And I also go in understanding where the other person's coming from. What has also helped coming with an authentic voice is when we come to a place of deadlock, I know that my solution alone and the other person's solution alone is fine, but the solution that we come up with together is going to be much better. So I go in that negotiation knowing my boundaries, knowing what are non-negotiables for me, but also knowing that I'm not the smartest person in the room. I might not have all the answers, but I want to understand where the other person's coming from. And together we build a better solution. So I think that's what's helped finding the authentic voice and then coming from that place on the negotiation table.
That's wonderful. And I think this is so important. I mean, to really know your non-negotiables, right? Where you draw the line and understand the other side, be empathetic, be curious about them, and work like your approach. It sounds like it's a collaboration, right? You collaborate with your clients. You don't sell them, you help them solve their problems.
Yes. And, all of us have problems. How, again, it takes a strategic mindset to understand what the problem is. And then how does your offering support those problems? And then the win-win, always coming with a mindset of not if one person wins in that negotiation, that's not a win. That really is never a win, because you might have won the war, but you lose the battle. So thinking of a bigger term and making sure that everybody walks away knowing that they have got something that's valuable out of that negotiation.
Yeah, and you mentioned something that I wanted to ask you about, because I run circles about negotiation, persuasion, and communication. And one of the participants asked me, have you ever used a win-lose negotiation strategy? And I told him, I don't recall ever using that strategy. And I wanted to ask you as well.
Let me share an example. So, certain negotiations may start by feeling win-lose. And I've been in a negotiation where I felt like I was on the losing end. And that could happen where, let's use an example. If you are working for a corporation and there are changes that are made at the top level that impacts you, right? You don't have a say in that. You're not negotiating and saying, oh, I really want this role versus this. Yes, you can ask for it, you can think about it, but sometimes that's what's forced on you is it's either this or that. And I've been in a situation where I was like, okay, I have to take this role. And that seemed like a loss to me. I felt like I was doing something that, I didn't want, right? But I think at that point, if you feel like you're on that losing end of a win-lose negotiation, it's good to take that step back and internalize. And it's always saying, is this a situation I can control? In my case, it wasn't a situation I could control. I did everything I could to try and control and move. But at the end of the day, I knew it was a situation I could not control. So then what does that leave me with? Either accept it or do something else, or make the best of the situation. And in that situation, I decided that I will make the best of this given situation and learn a skill set that I had no interest in. But to be honest, that skill set is what landed me my next big leadership role, is because I had done that. I had done some pre-launch work. And when I was asked to be a leader of a commercial team, this pre-launch work was what gave me the edge to get that job. So, there are situations when I'm negotiating, I don't want to be in that situation, because honestly, nobody leaves happy from that situation.
Yeah.
But if you're on the receiving end, I always tell people that I mentor, what is the option? Do you really have a choice? And if you don't, sooner we accept it and then see what is our learning in this situation, go with that approach. Because if you are in that situation and you have to live with it, do you want to crib about it every day? or say, this is what it is. I'm just going to take this and move in a positive way with it and see what comes out of it. And I guarantee you, if we've made that mindset switch, that I'm accepting the situation and coming out with a learning, things work out. Things always do. They have a way of working out.
Yes, that's a great approach. Always think about what am I gaining from that situation. Even if the situation looks not the best for you, you find the thing that actually helps you and helps you to contribute to your career, which is wonderful. I wanted, before we end our conversation, to talk about something that you mentioned to me in our pre-call. You mentioned that you have your personal growth rituals, that you take a solo trip to connect with your authentic self. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, so this is something, again, I think I started after my dad's death. We live in a busy world. And when you live in America, there's always something. It's a very social environment. So as a commercial leader, I'm always on at work. Mom of two kids, I'm always on at home. So, and we are connected, right? We live in this world of Instagram, LinkedIn. There's always news, and you're interviewing for something, you're talking about something. So there's always this content. What I learned over the years is you sometimes don't hear your inner voice. And who I was 5 years back is not who I am today. So my authentic self is also changing. My authentic self is also evolving. How do I continue staying in touch with that? When I keep saying you have to come from a place of your authentic self, how do I continue to keep in touch? So one thing that I've not missed a year over the last 6-7 years now is every year I do a solo trip for 3 or 4 days where I go to a location. And as soon as I reach that location, call my husband, say I'm here. And he has the number of the camp I'm at in. It could be a spiritual camp. I've done, and it's not religious. I've done a Hindu camp, Jainism camp, a Buddhism camp, a Christian camp, so different camps. So it's not about religion, but it's about taking me to a place, a different place most of the time, where it's this environment is stimulating to growth of this environment is conducive of spiritual growth. So what I do is on a Thursday evening, I get to that place, call my husband, talk to my kids. I'm here, settled, and he has the number of the camp, but I turn off my device at that point. I'm a big reader, so I don't take any books because I could be by myself for days and be happy reading a book. So I don't take books with me by design, and I get on this silence. Like as soon as I go there, I wear a badge saying I'm in silence, so I don't connect with anybody. That's the part I miss, but I intentionally, so that there's no opportunity for small chats. I just sit in silence. I'll attend, if they have classes, I'll sit and attend those classes, but otherwise I just carry a journal and a pen and I walk in nature for hours. The first day I'm restless because I don't know what I'm doing. There are 1,000 thoughts in my mind. By second day, I start settling. And that's when thoughts come. I sit down, I journal, I think about things that went right this year, things that I could have done differently. I put a plan of what I want to grow into this coming year. Who do I want to be? What kind of colleague? What kind of leader? What kind of mother? What kind of wife, daughter, sister? Those are things, friends. Like those are things that I put my mind on. Who do I want to grow up to be in this coming year? What are some goals I have? What are some desires I have? So, and you hear this voice. Honestly, deep down, all of us have this voice that knows who we are and what we need to do. It tells you the right thing to do if you just take a second to hear that voice. So I do that, no device, no books, no talking. And when I finish that Sunday night, I treat myself. I stay back on Monday in that town. I'm a big foodie, so I'll go check out the restaurants. I probably have 5 meals in a day that day and just eat all the amazing restaurants. And then by Monday night, when I'm home, I'm fully present again to be integrated to my family life, to my work life. And that's a ritual that I've just enjoyed so much. And I wouldn't give that up for anything.
That's wonderful. And I don't know if I can go that extreme, like no talking, But it sounds
I was going to say it wasn't easy, but now I look forward to it, honestly.
But it sounds like you create space. You create space for yourself to kind of clean everything, like the day-to-day noise, and be able to really connect to yourself and plan and strategize for the next year. And this is
Yeah.
something that, I had several coaching clients recently that they weren't sure what they wanted. And I
Right.
told them, you really need to have space in order to realize what you want. You
True.
cannot do that when you're so busy day to day with all the interruptions. There's so
Yeah.
much noise that your mind is too busy. You cannot even clear your thoughts.
So true. So true. And it's unfortunate. This is not for everybody, right? Do you have the capacity where you can drop everything and go for 4 days? And if you do have that capacity, if you have that support system and you have that ability, I found this incredibly valuable to be able to create that space, like you said, right? And again, I think people are different. For someone, it might be to be in camp with other women where they're sitting and creating vision board for the year, right? So it's how you approach it. And I'll tell you, I continue this practice because on a daily basis, I'm a runner. I just enjoy, and I don't listen to podcasts while I'm running. I don't listen to music or anything. I just run in silence or walk. Some days I'm not running, I'm just walking. But I give myself that 30, 45 minutes each day to again be disconnected, having that space to really think. And that helps a lot. And I'll tell you the last practice I do, which again, it's a small thing, but it's a daily practice, is when I go to bed every night, just thinking about what is my biggest challenge, thinking about it, letting it go and sleep. Say I have a monkey mind, and every morning the monkey mind has a solution for me. There's something so cathartic about just sleeping over a problem and getting up with a solution. So those are small things, but that help me create that space, really reflect on a daily basis.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing. And Ritu, it's been wonderful having you here. Before we end our episode, how can women reach out to you? How they can find you?
I think LinkedIn is the best place. I'm trying to be active, posting at least once a week, but look me up on LinkedIn. Ritu Natkarni is my handle there. So I would love to connect women. I enjoy it. I always say that mentorship is one of my favorite parts of my job. So even connecting with like-minded women, I get to learn a lot. So I'm looking forward to those connections.
Perfect. So I'll put your LinkedIn URL on the show notes. Thank you so much, Ritu. It was a pleasure.
It was a pleasure. Enjoyed spending this time with you, and I look forward to staying connected.
Absolutely. Thank you for listening to another episode of From a Woman to a Leader. This is your host, Limor Bergman Gross, and I want to encourage you to reach out to me on LinkedIn, Limor Bergman, and let me know, what do you think about the episodes? Feel free also to comment on Apple Podcasts and tell me, what do you want me to talk about? Which guests do you want me to bring? I really appreciate that, and have a wonderful day.